From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Hey, Nick.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. Just went camping in the rain.
Camping on your bike or camping on your feet?
Camping, I drove. We drove.
Oh, so it was like car camping?
Well, we were in a tent.
No, but you drove into the campground in your car and set up your tent. And
yeah, it wasn't like you're camping. Or when I went camping.
Hey, camping is camping. There's no cheating in camping either.
But you do get better spots if you're in a bike-only spot.
Well, that is definitely true. You get spots away from other people more often, which is really a nice part about the hiker-biker campsites in Oregon and California. You're kind of off on your own, away from cars, RVs, and all that stuff.
Right.
But still, camping's good.
Camping's good, yeah.
Yeah.
Even in the rain.
I'm back in Los Angeles and kind of getting back in the swing of normal life. I shipped my bicycle back from my dad's house and I built it up today. And I went out and rode it, and it felt really good to be back on my Surly,
Yeah.
And it made me feel good that I got it all back on and it's working, no damage in transport. So I'm back at it.
That is so cool. And we have an interview from a ride you did after you got back, right? Later on?
Yeah.
Ben?
Well, we have a bunch of interviews today. We have an interview with Karen Whitaker, who's the deputy director of the League of American Bicyclists. And we also have an interview with Lincoln Restler, who is a council member in New York City, and Ben Frommagen, who is a rider who I met on my trip. But before we get into all that, I wanted to talk a little bit about headwinds and tailwinds. A buddy of mine said, headwinds blow. Like that should be on our T-shirts, right?
Yeah, like the Bike Talk T-shirt should be on the back. Yeah.
Which we are both wearing, by the way.
Totally. It's a coincidence.
Yeah. When I was out on the road, I realized how important the winds were, how great it was to have a tailwind, and how difficult it made it when there was a headwind. And to kind of change that talking point from the bike ride to the Safe Street movement, I have felt like the Safe Street movement has had a little bit of a tailwind lately, that we're starting to get some politicians in place who believe in bike lanes and believe in multimodal transportation and, are starting to understand concepts like induced demand and traffic evaporation and things like that. But something happened just this last week that made me realize that we actually have a headwind at us right now.
Yeah, it's the federal government there was a list of proven safety countermeasures to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries in this country. The U.S. Department of Transportation removed 5 of them, not because they weren't true, but because they were inconvenient truths, I guess.
It's crazy, right? We need a government that wants to protect its citizens, and we need a Department of Transportation that understands, 40,000 Americans die every year because of traffic violence, and that car emissions are one of the biggest causes of climate change and noise pollution and so many other things. Yet now there's this headwind at us that the federal government is taking down proven safety measures that protect people on the street, drivers, walkers, bikers, scooters, wheelchairs, you name it. People who use our public streets are now going to be at more of a disadvantage because the federal government is changing how they put out information to the public.
So there were 28 proven safety countermeasures, and they took out 5. The 5 were bicycle lanes, our way of reducing injuries and fatalities, road diets.
Right. Everybody knows that a road diet is a lane reduction, right? Like maybe from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, where, rather than 2 lanes in each direction, it'll be 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane or something along those lines.
Yeah. Speed cameras.
Which we're just starting to implement. Los Angeles is just starting to implement speed cameras. San Francisco has already started. It's creating revenue for the city. It's slowing down traffic. It's protecting people who use the streets.
And a couple more that might need explaining: variable speed limits and appropriate speed limit setting.
Well, these are good ones, I think, because variable speed limits are electronic speed limit signs that change depending on the traffic conditions, whether it be weather or a crash up ahead or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And it slows the traffic down at 5-mile-per-hour intervals so that there's not a traffic jam, which causes another crash between a car stopping and a driver, on his phone running into the back of the car in front of him.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, they took down anything that mentioned bikes, but also anything that had to do with speed management. We didn't define appropriate speed limit setting.
Right, yeah.
Which is just having the speeds limits based on the road. How if it's a narrow road, then it's a lower speed. If there's if it's a neighborhood with people living in it, as opposed to just arbitrary numbers.
Right. These are recommendations that the federal government has put out in the past to educate city leaders, advocates, even just regular citizens about things that they can do in their neighborhood, in their community to save lives. And now these 5 issues will be taken off of that list of appropriate measures that a city can take to save lives.
Yeah. So we talked to Karen Whitaker, Deputy Executive Director at the League of American Bicyclists.
Karen, I don't know how to start this conversation with you. There's been a release recently about the DOT scrapping all references to bikes and bike lanes because it is a left-leaning, cricket-eating, climate form of transportation. What do you say about that? I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. What we've seen over the last few weeks is just a ramping up from the US DOT to discourage and possibly restrict the use of bike lanes, of states and local communities to use federal dollars for bike lanes. So first we saw a tweet talking about DEI bike lanes.
Right.
And how they were rescinding funds from bike grants to put it into roads and bridges. Then we saw the US DOT remove bike lanes from their proven safety countermeasures. And that's important because when a state or local government is applying for a federal grant or looking for a solution to a safety problem, they'll use those proven safety countermeasures because they're backed by a ton of data. Now, I just want to say the data on how bike lanes save lives, not just for people biking, but people walking, people in cars, is still true. It's just not on the website anymore.
It's just not on the website, right? They even removed bicyclists from the updated version. The previous one says pedestrians and people who are riding bikes, and the updated one just says pedestrians and removes bikes altogether.
Yeah, and I just want to add a new thing just happened where the administration sent their policy recommendations to Congress for the next 5-year transportation bill. And up until now, we have been talking about the administration canceling specific grants and bigger grants, bigger projects, but canceling them if there is a bike lane in that project.
Right.
Under this letter, they are saying to Congress, we want you to restrict all funding for bike lanes. And we want you to use that funding to remove existing bike lanes. So this is a completely different level, right? Before we were talking about individual projects all around the country. Right. Now they're saying no more money for bike lanes. That's what they're asking Congress to do. It just gives them more control overall on a bunch of things. They're asking for pre-approval, so you can't say, I'm applying for $50,000 to do X. Right. They're not going to guarantee you the $50,000. There's just so much more paperwork. Anyone connected to anything that has a federal grant has to go through E-Verify. That on top of this could really restrict funding going to bike lanes, because if they're not going to reimburse states, states aren't going to fund. Yeah.
Nick and I often talk about how there's a right and left position on bike safety and bike lanes and bikes as transportation. And this sort of proves that. It's very frustrating and I think putting people in danger.
I'm going to push back a little bit.
Okay.
Because in Congress, on the Transportation Committee, they had a vote recently about should we eliminate transportation alternatives, which is the main source for biking and walking. They lost that. 9 members voted for it, 55 voted against it, and 35 of the members voting were Republicans. So in other words, 26 Republicans said, no, we want that program. 26 out of the 35 Republicans that were there. So this administration itself is a different beast than, say, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party.
It's an outlier then to the Republican left-right split on other issues. This is a hard right issue. It's very frustrating. I'm going to try to find the quote. This is a common sense approach despite the left's belief that everyone should ride a bike to their shoebox-sized apartment to eat crickets to achieve a phony climate agenda. Now, that was a spokesperson for the Department of Transportation. How do you respond to something like that?
I'm not sure how to respond. Like, how would they respond to the majority of Republicans on the Transportation Committee that said, no, we want this money?
Right.
They're the ones living in a bubble. You know, when we did polling a few years ago and we said, okay, right now, roughly 2 cents of every federal dollar goes to biking and walking, 60% of Americans wanted more money to go to it, and 30% wanted the same amount.
Right.
There was a majority of people wanted an increase, whether they were Republicans, Democrats, independents, whether they lived in urban, rural, or suburban communities, regardless of where they were in the country. The administration is just out of step with the American people on this.
Right. But unfortunately, they're the ones that seem to be in charge because the subject headline to the staff at the DOT said urgent request. They're making this a high priority, it seems like.
They can't refute the data, so they're just removing it.
What can the league do about this? And what can we as smaller organizations, not just Bike Talk, what collectively can we do to combat this? Because as they take those countermeasures out off the websites, that, like you said, that is, proven data, and it's putting people in jeopardy who have to walk or choose to walk or have to or choose to bike.
I think the first thing is reach out to your members of Congress. So we have an action alert on our website asking folks to do that. We also suggest that people meet with their member of Congress in their districts. Congress is going to be home for all of August. They come back to D.C. for September, but then they're back at home in October. So look for opportunities. Right. Call their local office. Go in and let them know they care about it. Invite them on a bike ride. Invite them to come see infrastructure or even a dangerous intersection or something like that.
Right.
The League has some micro grants to help organizations do that. If any of the listeners are interested in doing an event with your member of Congress, let us know. We can send you resources on how to do it, and then we also have some funding available.
That's great. When I read the article, I got visibly angry. One of the things Nick and I talk about on Bike Talk all the time is that you're right, the data is proven that a road upgrade is not about the bike lane, it's about safety. And then the safety allows us to put a bike lane in. And it seems like they're making it all about the bike lane and not about safety.
Absolutely. Congress writes the bill. And so the other thing coming up is elections, and we just encourage everyone to vote.
Karen Whitaker, thank you for being on top of this, and for the League of American Bicyclists being on top of this, because if we're not, they're going to continue to strip away proven measures that protect everybody, not just walkers and bikers, but also drivers.
Yeah, this is serious, and they have really increased their attacks on bike lanes over this last month, and who knows what's coming next. So we really need to push Congress to push the administration.
Karen, thank you so much. One more question before we go. What's the difference in a DEI bike lane and a regular bike lane?
We're wondering that too. But honestly, if a bike lane helps improve equity, we're for it.
Right.
And we also like to say bike lanes improve the safety for everyone. So if we're talking about safety equity, I'll take it.
Right. Well, life is better for everybody when more people ride bikes. And I think that's your motto at the League. Karen Whitaker, the Deputy Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists. Thanks for coming on Bike Talk and explaining all this.
Yeah, thanks for covering this.
So Karen and the League feel that there's hope for the right, And not just hope. I think she thinks it's not that different, the right and the left. I think they must think it's a little somewhat different. But she gave as an example 26 of 30 Republicans voting against a measure to eliminate transportation alternatives, which is the main source for funding for biking and walking.
Right.
I like how she said that the safety countermeasures are still facts. Like it doesn't change their status as facts.
Right. Yeah. Just taking them off the governmental list doesn't change that they're facts. But it does change about how many people read those facts and understand those facts and know that they are facts of increasing safety on our streets.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious if you're pro-Trump, you're anti-fact.
Right. I also want to push back a little bit. I think it is a little bit of a left-right issue. I mean, think of Doug Ford in Toronto and Vicky Palladino, the congresswoman in New York, and Sean Duffy. Those are all Republican or right-leaning leaders, and they are all very anti-taking anything away from a car and anti-bike lanes and anti-bike infrastructure.
Yeah. We have another listener email from Jens from Norway, and in Jens's last email, he wrote that conservatives can spend on bike projects, but they don't like to. But what they absolutely can't stand is if bike projects somehow implies reduced car priority. And there's like a slippery slope where anything that's for bikes is going to take away people's cars and force them to live in 15-minute cities. There was the quote from I don't know if it was Sean Duffy or someone else at the Department of Transportation who said that the left wants to force us to ride bicycles to our shoebox size apartments and eat crickets in the name of a phony climate agenda. So
right. I mean, that's crazy.
And I think there's something changing now in politics. There was a quote from Troy Jackson. He won the Maine Democratic primary after the other
for
guy.
senator, taking the place of Grant Plattner.
He said, "We're not from the left, we're not from the right, we're from the bottom, and we're rising."
Great.
So I feel like maybe it's going to be about up and down now instead of left and right.
I'm sure he's busy, but maybe we can get him on Bike Talk to talk about how bikes are coming from the bottom and rising.
It sounds good. Now I have an interview with Lincoln Restler. Have you heard of him?
I have. He's a council member in New York City, in Brooklyn, and he's from District 33 in New York City.
Yeah, and he's on Instagram and he's on Citibikes all the time, and I heard he's doing good things.
Great. So here's Lincoln Restler, the council member from District 33 in New York City.
I reached out because I saw you in these Instagram videos on Citibikes. It's kind of Mamdani-esque.
I think it might be the other way around. He's doing the Lincoln thing on the Citibike, I think.
I love it. So how are you?
I'm great. I really appreciate the chance to connect and really excited to be on Bike Talk.
Awesome. I love what I've seen. It seems like you are branding yourself as the bike council member.
I love biking, but the primary reason that I ride a bicycle every day is because it's the fastest way to get around my community. I want to make every meeting and join every event and be in as many places as I possibly can. And there's no better way to do it than biking. And so all day, every day, I'm biking around the district. I take calls on bikes. My wife has insisted that I stop doing Zooms on bicycles, which is, I think, for everyone's benefit. But I've taken well over 5,000 city bike rides. I love city biking all over the city.
The Citibike plays into what you're doing as a council member because you're trying to make him $3 or less, right?
Exactly right. My council district stretches from downtown Brooklyn up to North Brooklyn and Williamsburg and Greenpoint. And when I'm biking from one side of the district to the other, it can cost 10 or 11 or even $12, which is a lot if you're going back and forth all day long, or for people in the community who are commuting to work from Greenpoint to Crown Heights, wherever it may be. Our subway system, our bus system is very Manhattan centric. But more and more, we're all trying to get around Brooklyn or from Brooklyn to Queens or wherever it might be. And biking is often the most efficient way to do it, but it shouldn't be so damn expensive. We've seen Citibike costs just skyrocket. Every year, the annual membership fee grows. I think it's been 5 years in a row that we've seen the membership costs increase. And the price per minute keeps increasing too when you're using an e-bike. We really need to rein in Lyft's business model and make this a lot more affordable for all of us who ride Citibike. And so we've sponsored legislation. I've introduced legislation that would cap the fee at $3. The same price that it costs to take a bus or a subway is what it should cost to take a bicycle around the city of New York for an e-bike ride up to an hour.
Yeah, if you think of it as transportation, why not?
It is essential transportation. I mean, just as we rely on our subways and our buses and increasingly our ferries to get around, our bike share program has become an integral part of the transportation landscape in New York City. Last year, we saw a remarkable number of Citibike trips, millions of trips per year, 205,000 riders one day last year, 5 million trips in October of 2024. That was the high point. But it's been growing and growing. It's more and more utilized around the city. More and more of us depend on it. And we need to make sure that it's affordable for all of us.
How does that work? Lyft is private.
Lyft is a private company, but they have essentially a monopoly with the city for operating the bike share program in New York. And Lyft has a contract with the Department of Transportation that governs the terms with which Citibike operates. And so we would pass legislation that would basically be an amendment to their contract between Lyft and the city of New York that would place a cap on how much a Citibike ride can cost. Lyft has been super opaque about their finances. We know that the bike share program in New York City, Citibike, is the most lucrative bike share program in the country, but we don't know how much money they make on it. In fact, I've been really troubled by some of the remarks by the Lyft CEO. About a year or so ago, he was being interviewed and he said, we want people to use Citibikes and bike share, but we don't want it to be so affordable that they don't take the rideshare program, use our ride shares and take Lyft vehicles. It raises real questions and concerns. Is Lyft inflating the costs of bike share so as to try and incentivize more people to use their cars where they make the most money? Instead, we need a lot more transparency from Lyft. We need to understand how much this program costs for them to operate. And if there's a need for a city subsidy to step in to help make this program more affordable to more New Yorkers, then we should do that.
Well, it sounds like Lyft has a conflict of interest. Now you have Mamdani there, and you were there before Mamdani. How long you been a council member?
I've been in the city council about 5 years.
That must be amazing.
It is amazing. I mean, to go from Eric Adams to Zohran Mamdani, it's like the best whiplash I've ever experienced in my life. Mayor Adams' administration was a mixture of corruption and incompetence that was really difficult to work with. We pushed for major bike safety projects and street safety projects across our district, like on McGinnis Boulevard. And Mayor Adams, like most senior staff, were indicted over the ways they traded favors and put their wealthy donors ahead of the safety of my own constituents. It was really, really challenging to advance projects that make our community safer. And now with Mayor Mamdani, we have somebody who deeply gets it and I know cares enormously about making our streets safer, about achieving a network of protected bike lanes. And I've ridden Citibike with him on multiple occasions, and I know that he understands that we need to do more to make Citibike affordable as well. He really has come into office focusing on the affordability crisis, kind of recognizing that so many of us are just struggling to get by because New York has become so damn expensive. The cost of housing, the cost of groceries, the cost of transit are all going up and up and up, and childcare. And he really wants to help rein those costs in. And I think that making Citibike more affordable, would be a natural part of his agenda.
Yeah, and now there's a just crazy federal assault on safe streets and biking. They took off the proven safety countermeasures list on their website, the speed cams, and also anything with the word bike in it. Mamdani's like, and you are like the opposite of that. Politically.
Yeah, I mean, the federal Department of Transportation, led by Sean Duffy, has been so backward in their thinking. They seem to only be concerned about cars and trucks and are really trying to undermine the safe streets agenda that Mayor Mamdani and I and others are prioritizing. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to, navigate this and continue to move full steam ahead using city tax dollars, using state dollars to continue to make our streets safer and to advance bold transportation projects across our communities. My vision is for our council district, District 33, to be a model for the rest of Brooklyn, for New York City, and beyond. Everything in New York is at a sense of scale that is hard to wrap your head around. But, we have more people in our council district than the whole city of New Haven. When we are implementing a comprehensive set of street safety reforms to have a truly protected network of bike lanes across our community, to expand pedestrian space, to make our communities safer for all of us who walk, who bike, who drive, I'm really hopeful that it's something that we can replicate in neighborhoods across the city and beyond.
Yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of things escape from New York and go national. So you mentioned McGinnis Boulevard. That's in your district. That was a victory, right?
It was. We were able to get a portion of the McGinnis redesign implemented in the last couple of years after a huge fight with Eric Adams. We reached an understanding with some of the local businesses that had been opposed and brought that to City Hall during the Adams administration, and they agreed to implement a compromise plan. But Mayor Mamdani, when he was a candidate, came out to McGinnis Boulevard in Greenpoint, and in his first week in office after becoming mayor in January, came to McGinnis Boulevard and he committed that the whole street safety plan for the full mile-long stretch of McGinnis Boulevard would be implemented comprehensively. It's going to be done in the next number of weeks, and I can't wait to bike McGinnis from Williamsburg up to the Pulaski Bridge to take you to Queens. But more importantly, for the kids in the public schools along McGinnis Boulevard, for the seniors in the neighborhood, for everybody with mobility challenges, the road diet that we're implementing on McGinnis Boulevard makes it enormously safer for all of us. It had been this mini highway that ran through the middle of our residential neighborhood, and now it's finally a street that's safe and one that we can all cross without feeling like we're putting our lives at risk. We're knitting the neighborhood back together by making McGinnis safer. It's a big accomplishment for my whole community in Greenpoint and for all the elected officials and leaders and organizers and the Department of Transportation that have worked on this for so long. But I'll tell you, it's just one of many projects that we're working on across our community that are making a major difference in delivering real safety for the people who live in, who work in, and who pass through our district.
Well, I want to give you a chance to talk about some of the other things you're working on. I know that you did the bike bounty bill legislation, which people should hear about. Bedford Avenue is also in your district, another contested bike lane.
Totally. There are so many projects that we're working on that we're really excited about, and a number of pieces of legislation that I'm really excited about. We have introduced citizen enforcement legislation that would basically empower you and me and every other New Yorker to actually hold drivers accountable who park illegally. My office did a study in downtown Brooklyn last year where we found nearly 500 illegally parked cars on the streets of downtown Brooklyn every single day. That's a lot of illegal parking. It's parking in bike lanes. It's parking in crosswalks. It's parking on sidewalks. It's parking that makes it hard for people with strollers and people in wheelchairs to get around. But it's parking that makes it more dangerous for all of us to navigate our neighborhood because it ruins the sight lines and puts us all at risk. We're working on a variety of strategies to crack down on illegal parking, but the one that I'm most excited about is our citizen enforcement legislation that would allow you or me or anyone else to take a photo of an illegally parked vehicle, send it into the Department of Transportation, and have a fine issued to the owner of that car. And the way we drafted the legislation is that the people who take the photos, who identify the violation and send it in, would actually get a portion of the amount that's paid by the person who parked illegally. So it gives an incentive for people to hold illegal parkers accountable. And if there's steady enforcement, I think illegal parkers will start to get their act together and follow the rules. People park illegally all over the place around our community every day. And because there's so little enforcement, people don't change their behavior. And I think citizen enforcement would really be a game changer that would make our streets safer. We've just introduced new legislation that would expand pedestrian space across the city of New York and direct the Department of Transportation to create 1 million additional square feet of pedestrian space, expanding sidewalks, public plazas, open streets. Walking is the primary way that we all get around as New Yorkers, but we don't do much to track or quantify how much pedestrian space there is or where we need more of it and where are the areas that are most congested. We all have that experience of like being stuck behind a tourist or somebody slow and it being really annoying because we're all in a rush. But I don't think that we often consider maybe the sidewalk should be larger here. Maybe we need more pedestrian space so that all of us are able to actually get around and where we need to go. And so we really want to get this legislation passed to expand pedestrian space around subway stations, key bus stops, around key commercial corridors, and other places where we're all trying to get where we need to go. We've got lots of other fun bills, like a bill to revoke all placards in the city of New York. You know, a lot of the illegal parking is actually done by city workers and city contractors. And so we think one of the ways that we can get those guys to follow the rules is to take their parking placards away that they believe give them the power to park wherever they want. And our enforcement agencies don't do very much to hold bad actors accountable who park illegally with placards. We are focused on getting Sammy's Law implemented locally across the city of New York, which would impose a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on most of the streets in New York City, which makes an enormous difference in reducing fatal crashes and serious injuries when a crash occurs. We're working hard with our transportation committee, led by Sean Abreu, to get the intelligent speed assistance devices installed in cars for people who are super speeders. The leadership in Albany just passed legislation that allows us to, really hold the worst super speeders accountable who are responsible for so many of the crashes and the terrible fatalities that occur around our city. And it basically prohibits speeding within their cars. So we're trying to get that passed in the city council so that it will be implemented in New York as quickly as possible. We got 36 council members to sign on to a letter in support of that. We've been just trying our best to organize our colleagues as much as possible to embrace policies that make our streets safer, that slow down dangerous vehicles, that prioritize the safety of cyclists and pedestrians. And I think we're making a lot of progress. And with a mayor across the hall in City Hall who really gets it and shares our values and wants to see every intersection, every street in New York City become safer, I'm really hopeful about all we'll be able to accomplish in the months and the years to come.
You're doing it all. You're doing everything.
I don't know about that. I really care about this, and I see how big a difference it makes, and I see that we can save lives. We can make it easier for folks to get around, safer for folks to get around, and there's an urgency to make that happen. I think that for far too long, the only thing we considered in designing our streets was what's convenient for cars, and now we're really thinking about what works for pedestrians and cyclists. How do we rethink the best uses of our curb space, whether it's for containerizing garbage or outdoor dining or more, that really makes our city more livable and enjoyable for all of us.
Amazing. If you're not living in Lincoln's district,
you should move to it.
You should move to it. And then I guess you probably have a bike ride for constituents, right? Don't you have a city council bike ride organized?
We should have a city council bike ride. I think that's something I'll need to set up. If we do it, will you come and join us for a bike ride?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. We will make that happen.
All right. Thanks, Lincoln. Thanks for
Nick,
coming.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. And if I can ever be helpful with anything, let me know. If you ever have suggestions of things we should be doing around our community, please don't hesitate.
And people can email you at...
Yeah. Email us district33@council.nyc.gov if you ever have any ideas for how to improve safety in our district or policies we should be implementing across the city of New York to make our streets safer for all of us.
Thanks, Lincoln.
Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.
He makes a great point, Nick, that e-bikes and bike share bikes are too expensive. And we've had people on the show in the past who have talked about how bike share has to be an equal or a similar, at least, pricing with buses and subways. Mm-hmm. I was just in San Francisco visiting my daughters, and I rode their bike share bike there. And I rode an e-bike just because I kind of wanted to try it and see what it was like. And it was through Lyft. I used my Lyft app to rent the bike, and I used an e-bike, and I was on the bike for 10 minutes, and it cost me $10. And I didn't go anywhere. I just kind of zipped around, the marina area and enjoyed being on a bicycle. And I was thinking that if I had had to take the bike into the financial district or to North Beach or some other neighborhood in San Francisco, it would have cost me $10 or $15 just to get there. And then to get home would have been another $10 or $15.
Yeah, it's not a way to get around. Seriously, I don't know what it is for. It's not for people to get where they need to go.
Well, what did Lincoln say about the head of Lyft?
He said that the head of Lyft, who also runs, the ride share, the CEO said he didn't want to make bike share competitive with ride share.
As a way of supporting Lyft drivers and Ubers and Lyfts, right?
Yeah, I mean, he said something like, we want to introduce people to Lyft through a bike ride and figure out a way to get them over to our ride share side. They're thinking of it as a way to get people into the Lyft model and then actually be in a car.
Right, which is exactly why we don't want an organization like Lyft or Uber to own and run bike share programs around the country.
Yeah.
When I was on my ride, the early part of the ride, I was really struggling with some headwinds, and I was in the California coast, and a guy rode by me and got right in front of me and started talking to me and blocking the wind for me and all that. And I think I mentioned this, a while ago when I was just starting the trip, but I didn't talk to him on air. I just told you the story about this guy came along, and that's who you meet on a trip like that, is you meet kind people who come in and sort of help you out. Well, he and I have stayed in touch, and he was just in Los Angeles this week, and he reached out to me. And maybe you'll remember, Nick, I had mentioned him. His name is Ben Frommagen, and he is on a 4,200 plus day streak of riding his bike every day for at least 2 hours. That's almost 12 years. He's done that.
That could be a record, actually.
I think it must be a record, yeah. Well, he reached out to me, and we met up, and I took him on a ride around L.A. We're having coffee afterwards, but this is Ben Frommagen from San Francisco. Ben, I'm really glad you called. Welcome to Bike Talk.
Oh, thanks. I'm having a great time. This is the best way to see a place if I'm not exploring it, just completely renegade on my own. Doing it with locals like yourselves is the best. So I saw a lot of amazing new things that I didn't even know existed. Franklin Canyon and Laurel Canyon, whatever, yeah.
Right. Well, before we get into all that, because there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and David Sobel is with us here, and David's been on the show before also. But I do want to talk a little bit about your streak. How many days is it, and how many years is it, and what are the sort of requirements of the streak?
Well, I'll start by saying when I turned 50, I just made a commitment to myself that I was going to ride every day, no matter what the circumstances of life were, deadlines, crises, whatever. It just became the thing I chose to do. Everyone eats, sleeps, and walks and every day and rides. So for me, it was a 2-hour ride is what I set the 2 hour. And the criteria was, I don't measure anything on a computer. It's really just elapsed time on my watch. And I ride with a lot of groups. I ride solo. Trainer rides count. I never miss a day when I travel. I borrow bikes. I rent bikes. What else can I say about it? No averaging.
Right.
There's no, I did an hour today, and if I do 3, I got an average. I have to do minimum 2. And it's not, and I've done a 300-mile ride in one day, and then the next day I did my 2-hour ride.
Right.
To a lot of my friends that are, all into Strava, which I'm not at all. I guess I don't exist in their world, and my streak doesn't really valid or count. But that's okay. That doesn't bother me.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that because I don't normally use Strava either, but I used it on my trip. I'm a little bit like you. I like the idea of not having a computer on the bike, although there are some nice things about it, and it is fun to connect with people, but I like that idea also.
I think the biggest drawback about me not being on Strava is that I don't know a lot of last names of people. Because when I'm riding with people, they'll tell me how far we went. They'll tell me how many feet we went. They'll tell me what their watts were. That data I can always grab from the people I ride with. And riding is central to my physical, emotional life. It satisfies my social. It gets me outside.
You were talking about something just a second ago, and then David and I both
totally agreed with you, of this idea of having anxiety or pent-up energy that you have to let out, and riding is your way of letting that energy out.
I think the letting out that happens with the riding enables me to be a good person and be more steady in my day, my non-bike day. So I guess that's another way you could put it, is I'm addicted to it. But yeah, it's important. I think there must be something happening internally, biologically, neurologically, where covering ground, taking in information while moving, that is very kind of centering and grounding for me.
Right, I would say moving at the speed of observation. That's the key that I'm kind of sticking with. David, how about you? Do you feel that way too?
I totally feel that way. And my wife would agree that if I don't get exercise, I'm a nicer person when I have had exercise and I've gotten that release. But I'm really interested in that concept of covering the ground, because for me it's more of a physical exertion and
like tennis could count then.
Yeah, but I love the idea of covering ground, almost like the elephants at the zoo. Now there's this big push to keep elephants out of zoos because that's part of what they do, is they need to cover ground, like for their well-being.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's just such an interesting concept, not just the physical part of it, but the covering ground and seeing space. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I find myself in recent times, like in the last year, backing off a lot of like hardcore drop group rides, because I had many years where I just like rode intensely. I did not race, but I rode with the youngsters and I could keep up, and I'm really proud of the fact that I can enjoy that camaraderie and companionship with people that are younger than me. But now there's a shift of doing more exploratory rides. Even in San Francisco where I live, like during the week, I'll opt out on a standard group ride, which will do a route that I'm really versed in, to just explore and just tackle hills as we see them, or stop wherever we want, and just kind of like a completely open-ended ride. And there's kind of a very satisfying aspect to that, like the unexpected of what can happen in a ride, what you see, who you meet, and then no one can take that away from you when you're off your ride.
Right. It's such a great way to explore the city where you live, but also the city that you're traveling to. We also talked briefly about this idea of having a partner who maybe doesn't share the same feelings about this. And David, you and I have talked about this before, that our wives don't bike, and sometimes it's a little bit of an issue or a little bit of a problem, and you've solved that by not having a wife.
Yeah, I'm divorced and recently unboyfriended, in large measure due to my cycling, but I would say that
I'm teasing, of course.
No, there's truth to it. There's a spectrum of benefits and drawbacks to all of it, but I would say at its core, it's the glue in my life that keeps me mentally healthy, physically healthy, satisfies a lot of desires and needs, and allows me to do my work.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree with that. I feel the same way. It helps me focus on the other things in my life. And I do a lot of meditation while I'm riding that solves issues in the other parts of my life, so that when I get off the bike, I'm thinking clearer. I'm more focused.
I want to add to that. So there was a period earlier in my streak where I would literally kind of iterate on design problems, and
you're an architect.
I'm an architect, and I would give myself assignments like, okay, I'm going to look for guardrails today of this kind that I'm working on at work. So I would do that for a while. I phased out of that, and then I tried music for a while, and really where things have kind of generally the direction things have gone is to just really be present in the moment wherever I'm at in the bike.
Right.
And I don't do that much off-road riding, and when I do that, that requires a different level of...
And when you say off-road, you mean like mountain biking or something like that?
Mountain biking and gravel riding.
Yeah.
I personally love the flow of the road.
Yeah.
That's my jam. And, one's mind can wander, and it does, and that's great, and that's fun. But for me, I'm about just being with the people I'm with, being in the environment I'm at, being really present it's a good practice for being off the bike and trying to be present. Helps me concentrate.
I felt that way on my trip. I was focused and I was present the whole time while I was riding, and I liked being on the road also. We talked about how great trails are and how it's nice to be away from traffic, but sometimes that gets a little monotonous. Even on the most beautiful trail, there is something about being on the road and dealing with cars and people.
Yeah, this brings up a point, something I'd really like to say. A lot of the folks I ride with, I live in San Francisco in the outer Sunset, and there's a lot of whining about the junk miles that we have to go through to get to the good stuff, to get to the coastal, to get to the awesome climbs and buttery descents. But I grew up in the Rust Belt, and I love the decrepit industrial landscape, and I like riding through all of it. I mean, even here in the city, I was telling you, riding down Vermont Street was exhilarating. There was crazy road damage and everything happening around me, and that was all part of it. I got to just flow through it and experience it.
And beat it, because bikes are so much better to get through that stuff. In a car, you're stuck in traffic.
Yeah. I have a memory going back 30 years in New York City when I was working crazy 80-hour weeks, and I would get on a beach cruiser and bomb down Fifth Avenue. At that time, it was just a sea of yellow taxis, and I felt like I was just surfing the city on a bike.
I know that feeling. Well, let me ask you one more question. Is the streak a good thing, or is it an onerous thing that you have to do it every day?
In some ways, it's becoming onerous because I feel like other parts of my body are paying the price. So within my ride, I try to achieve more balance that riding can create an imbalance.
Right.
So this is the addict talking. But I think just generally what I would say is that, well, here was something I just heard on the radio the other day, or maybe it was on Instagram, I remember. But anyway, some guy was talking about people go to the gym to work out for an hour and feel like that'll cover the 23 hours of the rest of the day, whether it's 6 hours of sitting, whatever. But they don't equate. Whereas people that live longer, they're gardeners. They're just living their daily life. So for me,
active,
just the integrated activeness is what I'm trying to maintain, and the bike is a big component of it.
Right. Well, great.
I'm curious, how much of the streak defines you? When you're riding with somebody, when you meet new people, how long does it take before the streak comes up?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I've had phases where I've talked about it too much and then not talked about it at all. And I think now I'm kind of in a phase where I'm talking about it again. I don't.
Maybe that's because I'm asking you about it.
Oh, that's in part. But to be my best self, I really am, conscious of the fact that I don't want it to be the thing around which I'm understood and defined by others. Right. So it's one piece. It's a way of, it's a vehicle for connection. In many ways with people. One last thing I want to say is there's nothing like that feeling of having a big effort of a ride, and at the end of it you just feel this unspoken connection and camaraderie with those that you did that with. And I've ridden with people for years, and we don't even talk about what we do outside of the riding, and it's a special kind of sanctuary.
I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for rescuing me on the road and breaking the wind when I was on my trip, and thanks for reaching out when you're in LA. I was really glad to ride with you here. Ben, thanks a lot for coming on Bike Talk.
Thank you so much for showing me a good time in LA, and hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, we saw some good sights. David, thanks.
Thanks for inviting me to ride with you guys today. That was amazing.
Absolutely.
Really enjoyed it.
I just love the stuff that Ben said about the positive aspects of riding. because I get so many of those same feelings when I ride. It calms me, it centers me. It helps me with my stutter. It helps me with my focus, with my thinking. It helps me with my relationship, I think. It's really positive. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you how you're doing, because you're riding less now because of where you live and the situation of having a young daughter and having to drive her places and things like that. But you just went on this bike trip. So what kind of feelings are you getting from riding or not from riding?
Well, when I went on this bike trip, I'm not riding a lot, but, riding for 50 miles each way from Connecticut to near where I live, near the Berkshires, it made me feel like I know where I am now. Like I am situated and like I know how to get here. I know how to leave here. In addition to, just changing who I am. It's hard to describe. And I don't know. I mean, I got to do it a few more times. I might do this other ride coming up. But I know that I was walking around different.
Right. I mean, in many cases, I feel like it's a drug. It's one of those things that just, rather than take a drug, I go on a bike ride, which makes me think of the story that the guy I bought my Bianchi from, 30 some odd 40 years ago. He said, because he was a drug dealer, I bought my bike off a drug dealer in Aspen, Colorado. And he said, I guarantee you, if you keep doing drugs, you'll stop riding your bike. But if you keep riding your bike, you'll stop doing drugs. Wow. I just think that's funny.
So he was like a sober bike riding drug dealer?
Well, I don't know that he was sober, but and I don't know how much longer he either sold or did drugs or how much longer he rode his bike. But I thought that was pretty good advice.
Yeah.
Before we go, do we have any listener emails?
We have a listener email, and it's from Jens from Norway again. He talked about Copenhagen and Copenhageners, because that's the best bike city in anywhere, arguably. And Jens, who's in Norway, wrote, I do think Copenhageners are different because they have seen exactly what consequences the changes brought them, and the truth is different from what they imagined. So their opinions have changed accordingly. But you seemingly can't use this lesson to convince non-Copenhageners, or at least no one seems to have found a way to do it yet. You can point to other places and say that the people there are happy about the changes, and we all know what the response will be. We're not Copenhagen.
Right.
No amount of rational and factual arguments will convince people. The only proven approach is to have leaders of the right mindset just make the changes and let people experience it. Such leaders are hard to come by. So I'd be very happy if someone, perhaps a Swedish researcher, found another way to do it. In fact, like I said in my first email, that's one thing I'm hoping to learn from listening to your podcast and others.
Well, that's great.
We just happen to have a Swedish researcher interview that's been in the can, and we haven't found a place for it yet. So I hope to get it in next episode. It's a study called The Social Cost of Automobility, Cycling, and Walking in the European Union by Stefan Gosling.
Great. But, I think he makes a great point, because when you look at things like congestion pricing in New York or McGinnis Boulevard in New York or any other infrastructure system that has gone in, people stop arguing about it once it goes in, and they realize it's not the end of the world. And congestion pricing has made Lower Manhattan better. And McGinnis Boulevard is made safer. And the people who were fighting it are no longer fighting it. They've realized, this is actually kind of nice. The world didn't end.
Right. I was on visitcopenhagen.com, and it said, what is it about Copenhageners that makes them take to the bicycle every morning, come rain, sleet, or snow? Is the average Copenhagener more eco-conscious than you? Hardly. Is it because they're all a bunch of health freaks? Not a chance. Or maybe because the bicycle is just part of the Danish DNA? Nope. It comes down to three important factors: infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure. Copenhagen has demonstrated that with a network of simple, safe, and connected infrastructure, the bicycle can be a competitive mode of transportation for people of all ages and abilities.
If you build it, they will come.
They will ride.
Yeah.
Good show.
We want to thank Karen Whitaker from the League of American Bicyclists for all the work that they do. And, it just makes me realize we really do need to support those kinds of organizations, whether it be in your city, in your state, or the federal one. We also want to thank Lincoln Restler the council member from New York City. We want to thank Ben Frommagen and David Sobel for going out and riding with me. And you guys owe me a coffee. We also want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Josh Hagelin, Stacy Randecker, Lindsay Sturman, Amy Ziering, and Kevin Burton. And we have a new intern, Nick, Eric Sawyer.
Yep. Hi, Eric.
So, Eric, we want to thank you also.
Yeah, it's great to have interns and a sponsor.
And we want to thank our sponsor. You know, normally we do a bike quote or a bike thought, but let's do a bike BS. Or what would you call it, Nick?
I would call it, what is that word for that they had, the 1984 by George Orwell? Doublespeak, doublethink. So this is not exactly a bike quote. It's more like doublespeak from our government. You call it government? What do you call it?
Yeah, you got to call it government.
Those who have taken over the government, although I guess they were elected, weren't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, doublespeak. So this is from a spokesperson from the United States Department of Transportation. And it says that taking down the proven safety countermeasures that reduce traffic injuries and fatalities from the DOT website is a common sense approach, despite the left's belief that everyone should ride a bike to their shoebox-sized apartment to eat crickets to achieve a phony climate agenda. And that actually hurt my heart. I felt a chest pain when I said that.
Crazy.
Anyway, thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute. And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Yourself a bike. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and run it all around, run it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and run it all around, run it all around. I wanna ride my bike today. Keep me fit, get me there. I won't go stinking up the air. Leave behind the daily grind. Let your mind unwind. If it's life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike. Get yourself a bike. Oh, 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 get yourself a bike.